longest you've ever kept a secret? I think in our family, my grandfather probably holds the record. He kept a secret for somewhere between 15 and 17 years just to keep me out of trouble. Back then, he and my grandmother lived about 5 miles out of town, and it was a rural, undeveloped area. There was an orange grove on the west side of their property. On the back side of their property was an agricultural tract that was used for growing strawberries. They were delicious. And every now and then we'd take a little walk back down the road, and we'd lean down to pick a strawberry or two. We had permission from the owner, and it was such a delight to pick a warm strawberry out of the field and eat it right there. It was great fun. On the other side of their property was a dolomite pit, a very deep dolomite pit and very big around. Now, I don't know if you know what a dolomite pit is or if you've ever seen one, but you can imagine they would dig dolomite out of the bottom, and of course it would fill up with water. This had been an abandoned dolomite pit. They didn't dig out of it anymore, but it had never been filled in. It was too expensive to fill one back in back then. On the edge of the dolomite pit, there was a road made out of, just cut into the side of the pit, where trucks would drive down to the bottom when they were still mining it. Well, over time, water would fill up the dolomite pit. And looking back now, it was probably 25 to 30 feet deep. It was quite deep. One afternoon, my grandfather was sidetracked. I don't know exactly what he was doing, but I wandered away from the yard. The only consolation was I had a companion with me. I was drawn by the interest of the dolomite pit. For what reason, I have no clue. I knew it was there. I was old enough to know it was very dangerous. But for some reason that day, it really drew my interest. And of course, it drew me. I remember walking to the edge of the dolomite pit. I was somewhere between 3 and 4 years old, probably, standing on the edge of it and looking down into the water. My companion then was my grandfather's collie dog. She was the premier rescue dog, just like you see on TV, and of course her name was Lassie. She knew in her maternal instinct and her canine smarts that I should not be there, and I certainly should not be that close to the water, to the edge. I was maybe 2 or 3 inches, the toes of my shoes, from the edge. Well, Lassie came around on one side of me, and slowly and very carefully, I remember that, how slow she was going. She stepped on the center of my feet and then across the other side. She put herself between me and the edge. If I had pushed her or without thinking said, "Lassie, get out of the way," she would have surely fallen into the pit. But she pushed in between me and the edge, and then she began to lean. And when she leaned, she pushed me backwards and away from the pit. So once she had moved me away from that danger, there was still more adventure to come. I decided that it was time to venture down that road that circled around the interior of the pit and went down toward the bottom. So I'm walking along, and Lassie's trailing along behind me, and all of a sudden my right foot sinks into the mud of the road. It looked perfectly dry to me, but I sank immediately with that one step all the way above my ankles. Well, naturally, I had to get that foot out, so I put my other foot right beside my right foot, so I could try to leverage, only then I had both feet stuck. Brilliant 3-year-old. I couldn't move. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't lift my feet out. I was stuck in the mud. Somehow or other, Lassie knew that we needed help. She ran back to my grandfather's. When he saw her running into the yard without me, he took up running too. He knew that she would never have left my side unless it was an emergency. And sure enough, she led him straight to me, just like you see on TV. And he came down, and I remember he couldn't get as close to me as he wanted because weighing more than I did, he could possibly sink too, and then we'd all be stranded there. He leaned out as far as he could to reach me and lift me. I remember hearing him grunt, straining to lift me up out of my shoes. And then he set me off to the side. And then he leaned over and he pulled out my shoes, covered with dolomite mud. Thick, gooey, heavy, clay-like mud. They were white. It was white gray mud on my beautiful new school loafers, less than a month old. That was pretty serious because back then, kids usually got one pair of shoes to last them a year. And then the next year they might get another new pair of shoes, and the shoes from the previous year would become their play shoes. You were always rotating out. But here my beautiful shoes were just ruined. He didn't spank me. He didn't scold me. He could tell by the look on my face how frightened I was. And he knew that I had learned a very valuable lesson that day. So very quietly we walked back to his house, turned on the hose, and he began the very slow process of cleaning my loafers, my brand new school shoes, as best he could. He had to get an old brush, an old soft rag, and try to work down on the threads, the stitching of the loafers, to get all of that white clay dolomite out from the stitches. He got it off the rest, but getting it off of that was so hard. He worked hours on that. And I remember my loafers were sopping wet. It's a wonder that didn't ruin them. But he left them out to dry, and the next day they had dried enough that I could wear them again. He carried that secret inside of him until either just before I got married or right after. I'm the one that told my parents. It was right around the time, within just a month or two of when I got married. But my grandfather had kept that secret all that time. They didn't know. They had no clue. I could tell by the shocked look on their face. Not shocked that I would get into mischief like that. Shocked because he had done such a magnificent job of cleaning my new shoes that even my mother didn't have a clue. And shocked that he would keep such an important secret to himself. But above all, he was very loyal to his first grandchild. He was a wonderful, wonderful gentleman. I'm sure you have some wonderful secrets of your own, some very special stories. I encourage you to take time, whenever you're in a quiet mood, take out a notebook and start writing some of those stories down. They're so, so important to pass on to others that come behind you, and also so you can go back and read them, and so that that memory of the story doesn't fade so much that you forget the very special details. I'm Sherie Smith from Boot Kick Your Success, and I considered that day a very big success that I did not get my behind tanned royally. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.